Isaiah 65 verse 17 has long been received as one of the most sweeping promises in Scripture. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind. Readers across traditions have interpreted it as pointing beyond the ordinary horizon of history. Many Christian commentators hear in these words the final renewal of the cosmos at the end of time. The new heavens and new earth anticipate the consummation revealed again in Revelation 21. 1. When creation itself is liberated from corruption and humanity is gathered into eternal communion with God. Here, the verse functions as a preview of the ultimate eschaton, when sorrow, sin, and death are undone and only glory remains. In Jewish readings, the passage often belongs to the vision of messianic times. The new heavens and new earth represent the renewal of Israel's life in the land, the vindication of covenant, and the restoration of cosmic harmony. The forgetting of former things refers to the erasure of exile and suffering, replaced by peace and justice under God's reign. Some modern interpreters read the verse less as cosmological prediction and more as symbolic discourse. The new heavens and earth signify a radical reconfiguration of consciousness, a remapping of human existence. In this key, forgetting former things is understood as healing memory itself, so that past wounds lose their power to shape the future. Though diverse in emphasis, cosmic, historical, or symbolic, these interpretations converge in treating Isaiah's vision as a singular thesis, either a final end, a political restoration, or a metaphorical renewal. Our approach departs from this consensus. Rather than imposing one overarching thesis, we take the verse on its own terms, its language, grammar, and cadence, and allow it to unfold through a series of interrelated triads. Each triad identifies three elements that together form a configuration of reality: how God presents God's self, what is brought into being, and what disappears from consciousness. This method resists reduction. It lets the text open like a series of interlocking rooms, each disclosing its own perspective, until a new world of meaning stands where the old one once stood. This is not an abstract exercise. The triads allow us to see the verse as a living system. They track how a word like behold functions not as ornament but as the ignition of awareness, how a participle like creating holds time in suspension, how memory itself is re-engineered so that a healed future can arrive without carrying the injuries of the past. In what follows, we begin with the first triad, where the stage is set and the players are revealed. The divine self-presentation, the creator, and the act of creation itself. Isaiah opens the scene with Hinni, often rendered, "Behold, here I am." It is a compact, performative utterance. In the prophetic tradition, it signals not only presence but initiative. God is not simply visible. God is about to act. This is why "behold" in this verse functions as more than an attention-getter. It establishes the condition under which true seeing becomes possible. It is as though the text says, "You cannot witness what follows unless you stand within the radius of a presence that declares itself." Observation is therefore not passive, it is awakened. The text trains the audience to become the kind of observer who can bear the brightness of what is about to occur. Immediately that presence resolves into agency, vorea, creating. Grammatically, this is an active participle, a form that bridges time. It carries the energy of is creating and the assurance of will create without being trapped by either. The subject, God, is implicit but unmistakable. The syntax refuses any gap between who God is and what God does. To name God here is to name God as creator in motion. The participle holds us in the charged interval where act and identity are inseparable. The one who says, "Here I am," is encountered as the one who creates in the very breath of that self-disclosure. What emerges then is a field of mutual presence. Observation is only possible because God self-presents. God is encountered precisely in the act of creating, and the act of creating is intelligible only within the light of the one who says, "Here I am." None of these elements stands alone. If you remove the divine self-presentation, Observation collapses into mere looking and misses the event. If you remove the act of creating, God becomes an empty title untethered from the world's renewal. If you remove observation awakened by the divine behold, creation happens unrecognized and the revelation remains unreceived. The triad therefore describes a simultaneity rather than a sequence. Presence, agency, and act arrive together and interpret one another in real time. This has practical consequence for how we listen to the rest of the verse. Once we grasp that creation here is not a distant decree, but the lived encounter of presence with agency, we can understand why the promise of a new heavens and new earth is announced in this register. The same voice that awakens observation is the voice that brings reality into being. The text does not invite spectators to watch a spectacle from afar. It invites witnesses to stand inside the radiance of an act that discloses the actor. In this first triad, the verse teaches us how to see. Attend to the behold, meet the one who speaks, and recognize that creation is not merely reported, it is happening in the speaking. The beginning is not a clock striking zero. It is a presence saying, I am here. And when that presence speaks, reality moves. If we can learn to hear that opening word, we will be ready for what follows. A world remade, and a consciousness reconfigured to dwell within it. If the first triad opened the door to divine presence and action, the second triad reveals the scope of what that action produces. Creation does not appear in fragments or increments. It arrives as a comprehensive renewal. Isaiah's language is unflinching. Not simply heavens restored, not merely earth repaired, but new heavens and a new earth. The cosmos itself, from its uppermost expanse to its ground of human dwelling, is remade. To understand what new means in this verse, we must pause and listen to the root of the word itself, chadash. Hebrew roots are compact worlds of meaning, and this one discloses the cycle at the heart of divine renewal. The first letter, het, pictures a fence, an enclosure. Its resonance is boundary and protection, but also life, for it shares kinship with hayim, life itself. Newness then begins with a separation, an act of setting apart one field of existence from another. The second letter, dalet, is the door. It signals passage, transition, movement from one state into another. It reminds us that the new is not conjured in isolation, but is entered, like stepping through a threshold. Finally comes shin, the tooth. It signifies transformation through breaking down, consuming, and reshaping. This is the energy of change, the willingness of the old to be dismantled so that life may emerge afresh. Put together, the root chadash encodes the cycle of renewal. Boundaries are redrawn, a passageway opens, and the old is consumed so the new may live. When Isaiah speaks of new heavens, he names the cosmic sphere, the expanse of order, motion, and divine habitation. To call them new is to say that even the architecture of the stars and skies is subject to transformation. When he speaks of a new earth, he names the human sphere, the place of history, covenant, and moral drama. To call it new is to say that the ground of human life itself is reconstituted. Taken together, the phrase forms a merism, heaven and earth, as a way of saying everything. Nothing is left outside the reach of this renewal. The triadic dynamic here is one of reinforcement. Creation generates the new heavens. The new heavens imply the new earth, and the new earth circles back to confirm creation as more than an abstract act, but as a world remade. Each element validates and sustains the others. If creation truly occurs, it must be visible in the heavens. If the heavens are renewed, the earth cannot remain unchanged. If the earth is remade, creation has proven itself total. This is not a linear sequence, but a cycle of necessity. The deeper lesson hidden here is that divine transformation does not proceed by patchwork repair. It works by enclosing what was, opening a doorway into what is, and consuming the old so that new life may take its place. This is the rhythm encoded in the word chadash. The heavens and the earth stand as symbols of totality, but the process by which they become new is the same process that governs our own lives, setting boundaries with the past, stepping through thresholds of change, and allowing what once was to be broken down so that renewal may come. The promise of a new heavens and a new earth is not about a distant cosmic overhaul. It is about learning to live inside the cycle of Chadash. It is about recognizing that every act of divine creation carries within it the rhythm of boundary, doorway, and transformation. And when we see this, we can begin to understand not just what God is doing to the cosmos, but what God is doing to us. If the second triad unveiled the scope of divine transformation, the third shifts focus to what must disappear for that transformation to take hold. Creation of the new requires the erasure of the old, not only in substance but in consciousness. Isaiah expresses this in strikingly negative terms. The former things shall not be remembered, nor come into mind. Here we encounter not a gentle fading of recollection, but a deliberate absence, a cosmic refusal of memory. The first element is no things. The Hebrew harishonot, the former things, is negated. Lo tisakarna, they shall not be remembered. What once was, what held precedence and order, no longer survives into recall. The word rishon signals priority, what came first, but here that primacy collapses under the weight of negation. The second element is no past. If the former things cannot be remembered, then continuity itself is severed. Time loses its thread. The past is no longer a usable resource. What was ceases to function as a referent. The third element is no memory. The verb zakar, to remember, carries the sense not only of mental recall, but of active commemoration, a bringing into consciousness. In its passive nephol form, tisakarna, it is not merely humans who fail to remember, but a cosmic condition in which remembering cannot happen. This is an unremembering, a dismantling of the faculty of evocation itself. Together, these elements define a void. The text is not describing absent-mindedness, but an ontological cleansing. The former world, its patterns, its history, its echoes, are not just forgotten but stripped of the possibility of being recalled. This makes space for the new creation of Triad 2 to emerge unencumbered. Without the absence of memory, the new heavens and new earth would be haunted. Instead, Isaiah imagines a world in which the ghosts cannot rise. But here lies the deeper lesson. Negation implies its opposite. To say that former things shall not be remembered is to remind us that existence itself normally demands remembrance. In its affirmative form, the triad would read, things give rise to pastness. Pastness inevitably generates memory. Without things there is no memory. Existence naturally folds into time, and time insists on being recalled. Memory is not optional, it is the seal of reality. To be is to leave a trace in consciousness. The brilliance of Isaiah's vision is that it recognizes both sides at once. On the one hand, the negated triad dismantles the ordinary chain. Without memory, the past dissolves, and with the past dissolved, the former things are undone. This is reversion, a retroactive unmaking of what was. On the other hand, the implied affirmative reminds us how extraordinary this erasure is. Under ordinary conditions, reality creates memory. Things insist on being remembered. What Isaiah describes, then, is nothing less than a suspension of the world's usual logic. For the new heavens and the new earth to exist, the normal chain, existence into past into memory, must be broken. Imagine a world in which trauma cannot call itself back to mind, in which grief cannot rise again to seize the heart. That is what Isaiah describes. But do not miss the radical claim beneath it. Memory is the natural echo of existence, and for God to wipe away memory is to rewire the very structure of reality. This is the cost of new creation. It is not just that the old world is gone. It is that the very capacity to relive it has been unmade. And that is the only way a future can arrive free of the weight of what came before. If the third triad dismantled memory, the fourth dismantles what follows naturally from memory connection. The verse moves from thought into affect, from the mechanics of recollection into the sphere of the heart. It is not only that the past cannot be remembered, it is that the past cannot rise into love, cannot stir the communal or emotional life of those who once bore it. What Isaiah describes here is not mere forgetfulness, but the clearing away of attachment itself. The Hebrew phrase velo ta'alena al-lev, they shall not ascend upon the heart, is decisive. The subject they, in feminine plural, refers back to the harishonot, the former things. These things cannot ascend, cannot rise. The verb Allah, to go up, is charged with liturgical and spiritual resonance. It is the verb of offerings, of prayers, of thoughts that move upward toward God. To say that the former things cannot ascend is to say that they can no longer present themselves in the arena of devotion or deliberation. They cannot take the stage of the heart. And the heart itself, lev in Hebrew thought, is more than feeling. It is the core of volition, the seat of wisdom, the locus of moral loyalty. If the former things cannot rise there, then no love, no devotion, no binding affection attaches to them. There is no community constituted around their memory, no people shaped by their remembrance. What was is not only forgotten but unfelt. The affective bond is severed. The community that might have been reconstituted through grief or longing is absent. In this negated form, the triad describes a retrospective unraveling. Without love, there is no people capable of communal response. Without ascension, no stirring of the heart. Love cannot take root. And though ascension might normally generate peoplehood by binding them around shared memory, here the chain is reversed. The past cannot re-emerge because the very mechanisms of affect and connection have been disabled. The emotional and spiritual infrastructure that could have revived the old world is gone. But again, the negation invites us to glimpse the implied affirmation. In its positive form, the triad would read, if people exist, then love arises. If love exists, then ascension occurs. If there are no people, ascension collapses. The natural order is that community gives rise to love, and love propels the upward movement of thought, devotion, and prayer. The heart becomes the medium where human presence and transcendent connection coalesce. In this light, love is not merely an emotion but an ontological force. It is what grants reality to both community and transcendence. Isaiah's negation, then, is profound precisely because it runs against the grain of this natural order. Ordinarily, people remember, love, and allow memory to rise into devotion. Ordinarily, the heart binds community to its past. But here, in the new creation, the chain is broken. The former things cannot ascend, cannot stir love, cannot reconstitute peoplehood. It is as though God has drained the effective power of the past, so that it cannot claim the heart again. Imagine a past so emptied that even nostalgia cannot summon it, a history so disarmed that grief itself cannot reattach to it. That is what Isaiah envisions. The absence of connection is not a loss but a gift. Only when the old loves are unmade can new loves be born. Only when the former bonds cannot reform can a new community emerge around a new creation. In this triad, the text insists that the clearing of the heart is the necessary precondition for its renewal. By the time we reach the fifth triad, Isaiah's vision has already unfolded in sweeping gestures. We have seen the act of creation arise out of divine self-presentation. We have watched new heavens and new earth replace the old order. We have witnessed the negation of memory and the disarming of emotional attachment to the past. Each of these triads prepared the way for the final synthesis, a reconfigured integration, where the new creation establishes not only a world remade, but also a consciousness and community capable of inhabiting it. The first element here is the new reality itself. The heavens and earth reshaped, boundaries redrawn, existence recalibrated. But the second and third elements draw directly from what has been negated in the prior triads, where once there was no memory, there now emerges a new capacity for remembering, not of the former things which have been cleared away, but of the new reality itself. Memory becomes forward-facing, covenantal, directed toward the meaning of what God has inaugurated. Likewise, where once there was no love, no effective assent of the heart, there now opens a new possibility of connection, not attachment to what has been dismantled, but devotion, loyalty, and affection for the world that is now being born. The genius of this integration is that it does not simply restore what was lost, it transfigures it. Memory is no longer the prison of the past, but the steward of the present. Love is no longer bound to grief or nostalgia, but becomes the bond of community in the new order. Together, these elements form an ecology of being in which consciousness and affection are recalibrated to align with the recreated cosmos. The heart that was emptied is now ready to be filled. The mind that was cleansed of the old is now free to remember the new. The logical pattern here is one of inclusion. New realities open the possibility of new memory. New memory generates the field of new connections, and connection in turn feeds back into both memory and reality, reinforcing them, interpreting them, deepening them. This is not a simple chain of cause and effect, but a mutual enfolding. Each element contains the others. To live in the new creation is to remember it and to love it. To remember it is to build connection within it. To connect within it is to reinforce both the memory of its meaning and the reality of its presence. In this way, the fifth triad serves as the capstone to the verse. Isaiah is not content to describe a cosmic overhaul. He insists on describing the reconstitution of human interiority and community. Without new modes of memory and love, the new heavens and new earth would remain external, uninhabited, unintegrated. But with them, a complete transformation occurs. God, world, consciousness, and community converge. The promise of Isaiah is not only that God will make a new world, but that God will make us new enough to live in it. Our remembering will be healed, our loving will be redirected, our hearts will be free to rise again. The new heavens and the new earth are not just places we will see, they are realities we will learn to hold in memory, to inhabit in love, and to sustain together as a people reborn. Isaiah 65, verse 17, does not merely announce a distant future. It enacts, in its very words, the logic of creation and renewal. By listening to the verse through triadic analysis, we see that its power lies not in a single thesis, but in a sequence of interwoven systems. In the first triad, divine presence, agency, and act coexist inseparably. God is encountered in the simultaneity of self-revelation and creation. In the second triad, creation reinforces itself through the emergence of new heavens and new earth, a comprehensive renewal that encircles all reality. In the third and fourth triads, memory and attachment are dismantled. The past cannot rise, cannot reclaim affection, cannot bind a community around what has already been undone. This clearing is radical, a suspension of the world's ordinary logic of remembrance and love. Finally, in the fifth triad, integration occurs. The new cosmos, new memory, and new connection unfold in mutual inclusion, ensuring that creation is not external to us, but inhabitable by healed hearts and reconfigured communities. This progression is compelling precisely because it follows the logic Isaiah himself has inscribed into the verse. The Hebrew grammar and the rhythm of negation and affirmation reveal a system in which God does not only make a new world, but makes us new enough to live in it. Creation, memory, and love are rewired together. The lesson here reaches beyond exegesis. Isaiah 65, verse 17, invites us to see how much is at stake in attending closely to the original text. A translation can preserve the promise, but only the Hebrew shows how the promise works, through triadic interplay, through the interplay of affirmation and negation, through the very structure of the words themselves. Careful analysis uncovers not just meaning but movement, how reality is dismantled and remade in language. To read scripture this way is to resist premature reduction. It is to let the verse disclose its depth in stages until the interlocking triads form a coherent world of meaning. In doing so, we discover that theology is not only what the text says, but what the text does when its words are allowed to breathe. The importance of this method, then, is clear. By returning to the original words and attending to their triadic logic, we learn not only what God promises, but how God promises it. And that how is itself transformative. It trains us to see, to remember rightly, and to love anew. It prepares us to inhabit the new heavens and the new earth as a people capable of memory healed and love reborn.